Okay. One more thing I gotta do. This episode is by the way, everyone, this episode is a treat for everyone because I have last year's America's Got Talent semifinals with me, Amanda Mammana. At the age of 10, she developed a speech impediment. Once an outgoing kid, she became very shy and insecure. Amanda picked up the guitar as a way to escape and started singing a couple months later. She then joined her school's worship band in 7th grade, and a year later, her church's worship band. As she got older, Amanda battled insecurity and self-doubt. According to Amanda, I was embarrassed by the way that I spoke, and I felt that my voice didn't matter. This led her to have a summer filled with anxiety and depression. Because of the struggles Amanda went through, she was given inspiration to write songs about the human condition. Everyone faces trials and tribulations, and I agree with her. Simon Cowell called her incredible, and I also agree with him, so I can no longer wait. Let's welcome the incredible Amanda Mammana to Autism Rocks And Rolls. Amanda, how we doing?
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Sam. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. So my first question to you is, what does having a speech impediment mean to you?
I think growing up, it was I viewed it as more of a struggle and something that I wanted to get rid of. But now I think it's a part of me, and it's something that I can use to inspire people.
And that's the same thing with autism because it ain't going away. So why make a big deal out of it?
Exactly.
No point of doing it. I mean, you can't cure it.
Absolutely.
Now, what were your initial thoughts when you learned that you saw you were going to have a speech impediment for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I think as a 10-year-old kid, it was scary and confusing because I didn't understand what was happening to me.
Oh, you didn't? Well, let's try to think of you as a 10-year-old for a second. I'm not trying to say go back in time and be a 10-year-old, but try to go back in that time frame and try again that process of, can you describe what you were thinking when you were 10? You were thinking, oh boy, this ain't gonna be too hot.
Yeah, I think like early on, like when it was starting to come like and be an issue for me, I was scared because I was a like a super outgoing and friendly kid, and then suddenly the things that I wanted to say, they weren't coming out. And for me, I was like, how am I supposed to live and be able to communicate with people when I can't speak properly?
Right. But what we can learn is, I think as time goes on, with you in particular, and I mean this in a compliment, speech doesn't really matter because you got something to back it up. You got your voice.
Yeah.
Now you can just start singing when you speak, right?
Yeah, right.
Now, how do you think someone who has a speech impediment brain like operates based on your experience?
Yeah, I don't know too much about it, like scientifically, but when we speak, it uses one side of the brain, and when we sing, it uses the other side of the brain. So like those two things like are separate, but yeah, I don't know like too much about it, like what's like exactly going on like in my head when I have a block. um um uh yeah, but I think it's cool that speaking and singing like are totally different, like in our brains.
Yeah, that is pretty impressive. And it is kind of unique to think of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is the most rewarding and the most difficult part of having a speech impediment?
Um, I think the most difficult thing, I think is, or for me personally is, um, meeting new people, that don't know, um, um, that I stutter, because, you can get um, like a lot of different, um, reactions, uh, from people. Um, I think the most common one, that I've gotten, um, throughout the years is, um, if somebody asks me like my name and, like it takes me a second, uh, they'll always come at me, with the question like, um, uh, did you forget your name? And like it gets really, really frustrating like after a while. So I think, um, having like to meet people, um, it's definitely challenging. But the most, um, rewarding, part I think is just, being able to, be, um, vulnerable, and creating a space, for people to be safe and to open up, which is, what you're doing, and I think that's like really awesome.
Well, thank you. I'm attempting to do that at least. I mean, trying the best at it. But they said they forget your name. What they need to understand though is, yeah, I'll admit it, you're verbally challenged, but you're not mentally. Based on, talking to you,
Exactly.
seem like you can still make your food and all that
Mhm.
crap.
Yeah, I think, uh yeah, people often, um yeah, will think that, like I don't know, what I'm talking about, just because, uh it might take me a bit longer like to get it out.
Yeah,
That
you
makes
have to
sense.
be the big kid going like
Yeah.
me. That's I have to
Yeah,
do that a lot too. Don't worry.
yeah.
Now, what advice would you give to others who have a speech impediment?
Mm. I think, yeah, um the biggest thing that I could say is to, um just to not let, your fear of what, um other people, like are going to think about you, um stop you from, um using your voice, and speaking up, uh and taking, um every opportunity to share your story. Yeah, I think it's important just um to understand that, uh just because we might not sound, um like everybody else, uh that doesn't make us any lesser than.
Right, I agree. I mean, sound is
Mhm.
one part of who you are. It's not the
Mhm.
full picture. I
Mhm.
mean, you
Mhm.
and I think personally what's great about where we are, at least, is we can
Mhm.
find opportunities. I know I've said it before, but you make it up with your singing. And that's something that
Mhm.
makes up for the speech or for the what society deems you're not as
Mhm.
sharp as they say.
Yeah, 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 totally. Yeah, I think that, um I've come like to realize that like, um uh my speech, it doesn't, um define me. Like it's not just, um like who I am. It's part of who I am, but there's so much more, um uh to me than just that.
Oh, 100%.
Mhm.
Now, I do want to talk to you more about America's Got Talent. So, how did you feel when America's Got Talent sent you the email? Because that's what I've heard from other previous media
Mhm.
outlets that that's how
Mhm.
you got on.
Uh, yes, yeah. So last, uh January, I, um uh I did a Zoom audition for the producers, which is like the first step. And a couple weeks later, I got that that email saying that they wanted me to come out to Pasadena for the show, like an audition. I was at work when I got the email, and I looked down like on my phone, and I like just like stopped short, and like I literally like I fell like to my knees because I was just like um um like just like in complete shock. And then it hit me, and like I was just so excited.
I can imagine the excitement you were feeling.
Yeah.
I bet you ran around your friends saying, "Hey, I
Mhm.
got HT."
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, there's something I know. So during the audition, and this is just from an observer's point of view,
Mhm.
you were about to lose it. I mean, there's no
Oh,
other
I
clean way to say it.
yeah.
You were about to
Yeah.
lose it before
Yeah.
you sang. But there's something I know is right before you did, you looked at your dad. So
Mhm.
my question is, did your dad tell you, hey, if you feel like you're about to lose it, look at me, or how'd you keep it together?
Yeah, I think um um yeah, I was definitely like so nervous, and it like it just didn't feel real. Um like being like on that stage, and like I can remember um just looking at him because he um he's my dad, and he's been there for me like for my whole entire life, and um like he was um um like it felt safe like to look over at him. So that's why I did that.
Yeah. The issue with me, and I do a lot of this was motivational speaking. I'm trying to work on it. Is I always stare at my mother like sometimes like I follow her around like hey, and then she's like, look at the audience, that's
Yeah,
why. So I've done that before too,
yeah.
so I can totally relate to where you're going. And I want to know this too. So what were you thinking when you made the audience cry, but also got the standing ovation that you well deserved? A
Thank you.
well
Yeah.
deserved one.
Um yeah, I've um um like people ask me like that question a lot, and um I think like I was just on like cloud nine. Just like it didn't feel real, but it felt so real like at the same time because it was like mm, um a confirmation for me that I was doing what I felt called um uh to do. And um um having like the four judges stand up was just like crazy, because like they're the um like the people that like are gonna send me through, like um uh or, or send me home. So um uh the fact that they liked it was huge for me.
I can only imagine that. There's something else I noticed. Did you hear the lady who right after your audition, like the applause like stopped,
Yes,
saying, "But you are good enough." Do you remember that?
I did. Yes,
What was your
I do
reaction to
remember
that?
her. It like um yeah, like I think um uh b- because before like I went out and stuff, like I was so nervous. I was um like what like are they gonna think about me? um and um and then hearing her say that, like it it calmed my nerves, like, and it made me um uh just feel safe. So
Yeah, I can imagine that too. Once you heard you are good enough, that's like your
Mhm.
clarification. Like, hey, you did well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And
completely.
I'll tell you advice though. This is just my personal advice, and I guess my words of wisdom. I mean, I don't know how big you are with caring of what others think of you. I've
Mhm.
learned that's the biggest secret in order to feel a lot more confident on stage. I mean, you can care after, but in that moment, it's just like, all right, it's you, hands down. There's no one else in the room.
Mm.
You get booed, you get booed. I mean, it's what it is.
Yeah, that's really true.
I mean, I'm not wrong,
Absolutely.
am I?
No, yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah. And I want to know this. What about friends? Did you make any buddies on there?
I did, yeah. The people that I met, um, from the producers, the other contestants, even um, uh, the security guards, just like, every single person like that I met, like was so kind, and so loving, and I still, I keep in contact with, a couple producers and, um, uh, some of the other contestants as well.
I know one of them, your
Who?
buddy Ben.
Ben. I love Ben.
Oh, there you
Yes.
go. Who I previously had on the show. And for the listeners, C226, Following Faith with Ben Waits. So if you have to, describe Ben Waits from your perspective.
He is, kind, humble, um, um, selfless, um, fun to be around, and just, um, a, a, a warrior, for, um, his faith. So,
Yeah, I figured that that was going to be something that you bonded over. Which, while we're on topic, let's get into it. So,
yeah.
my two questions for that is: when did you discover God, and how has God helped you personally and professionally?
So I grew up in uh, a Christian household. But it wasn't until I was around the age of, 14 or 15 where I truly made, my faith, um, uh, my own. I went through, uh, a season of, anxiety, um, and, depression, um, and I started to turn to things, that weren't, that wouldn't, um, fulfill, um, the void, uh, that was in my heart. But, I finally decided to turn to God, and I felt, fulfillment, uh, in that. Yeah, and, he's helped me a lot. I've, um, I felt that, he's put a calling, um, on my life, to, uh, encourage people, and to, um, um, spread the gospel, through music. And, yeah, he's, um, I've realized that, I am who I am, because of him. Um, and I'm, his child. Um, so, that's helped me to not, care what, um, uh, other people, think about me, but to, care about um, what he thinks about me, and what, he says about me, um, and who I am, because of him.
That's good. I'm glad you had that source. And truth be told, I'm not a Christian myself, but I can see why. I have a friend, and for the listeners, see what is it? So 142 Identical Yet Opposites by VJ Yoho, but he's like probably my best friend in the whole wide world. I mean, we know each other since kindergarten, grew up together. But I
Awesome.
swear he could have a world record for having surgeries. He's
Oh,
at
wow.
least over 100 that I can count over.
Wow.
And he's his issue is he's almost like Ben, but not to a point. He has spina bifida, so he's
Okay.
wheelchair bound, and part of his spine's missing, and
Oh,
just
wow.
has some medical issues. And I think God has helped him get through those surgery and has helped him get through some really dark days.
Mm.
So I can understand why people go to him in order to be like, okay, I need help. Everyone's tried. Maybe you could say something that I'm not thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And I do want to talk more about your speech impediment a little bit. So, did you get any like speech language therapy at all?
Hmm. Um, so, I did some speech therapy when I think I was like 13, like, or 14. I did that for, probably about like 6 months. But, it didn't really help, a ton. And then, a couple years ago, I worked with a speech, pathologist, uh, just to try to, get rid of the tension, that I hold, uh, uh, in my throat. Um, it wasn't like to necessarily, get rid of the, um, the stutter, but to, like help me with, um, uh, breathing and, um, um, like the tension. So,
Okay. You weren't the
mhm,
only one with speech language therapy.
yeah.
I was too. I was in it for social cues. I'm not the best with social cues.
Okay.
Like you could probably tell if someone's rolling their eyes at you, or be
Hmm.
like, "Oh my gosh, really? Shut up." That's not me. I'm like, you gotta
Okay.
tell me. Like you gotta tell me
Right.
specifically. Like I can't tell if you hate me or not. You need to say to my face, "I hate you." I mean, I know
Gotcha.
it sounds awful, but I'm not the type of person who is, as I've gotten older, rather you say it to my face than you know than try to hide it through your body.
Right. Right.
Not It's not because I don't want you to. I mean, if I could tell, I'd be the first guy to be like, okay, you know what? Do it. I don't care, do it. But I can't.
Mhm.
I'd rather you that's why I need verbal consent.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's the best way to describe it there. Now, I do want to talk to you more. Well, and there's something else I want to ask with your speech impediment. So, believe it or not, you're the first speech impediment person I ever met who has done like stops in the middle of their sentence. I
Mm.
mean, that's the first one because a lot of my friends who I have had or have had speech impediments, but they
Mhm.
repeat their consonant. So instead of like do, it's da 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 da.
Mhm.
Yours is like where you stop and then where you just stop and like take an extra breath or something.
Mhm.
Is there something called for it or
Yeah. So some people, they refer to it as um, a stammer. So it's like, um, the breath, like it will cut off and just, um, like stop. Uh, and it's kind of funny. So, throughout like, um, these 10 years that I've, um, had um, the stutter, it's changed. So, um, like when I was younger, I would, um, uh, repeat like the consonants. But it's changed over time. So,
right? Okay, so it's called a stammer. Okay.
mhm,
Okay. I knew there's something for it, but I just couldn't think of like what the
mhm,
definition was or thank you for
mhm.
clarifying that. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So now I heard you were basically through your church, you felt like your voice mattered. So
Mhm.
what did the seventh grade worship band do to show you that your voice mattered? Like, what did they do for you?
Yeah, I think, um, um, as like a middle schooler, like, um, like you're changing, like, and you want to be heard. But for me, I, I didn't feel heard, and I feel like, like I didn't have like a thing, or like a hobby or like a passion. And I think like I was so tired like of um feeling that way that I like I auditioned and like I made it, and that it it gave me like a community and a like a platform for me to sing songs um and like encourage people like in that way. So
Right. I get you. I was like that too. For the longest time, I thought I was going to be a kid in the basement playing,
Mhm.
kid in his parents' basement playing video games. I really did think that for a long time, but once I found podcasting, it saved my life. So I guess what I can ask you is, since my mind's on it, since podcasting has saved my life, do you think singing saved yours?
Yeah, I think yeah, it definitely it it played a big factor into that. But um uh going back to um my faith a bit, I think that's um what truly saved me.
Right. And
Mhm.
you, like me, have anxiety and depressions, but you said it was mainly hit it in the summer or a certain summer. So why don't you
Mhm.
talk to me about that summer you had when you had bad anxiety and depression?
Mhm. Yeah, I think um once again um like I was 16 years old, and like I was trying to find my um identity and who I was, and um I I was struggling like to find that, and that weighed me down. I think so. I began to like to turn to things that would um uh quote unquote help me in that moment, but left me feeling even more um uh, empty, um which caused um um anxiety and depression. Um, but it it was that summer where um, uh, I wrote my first song, um, and it just it gave me um, um, the space to just pour out how I was feeling. Um, and I can't explain it, but like it uh, it uh, it it made me feel like so free. So.
Ah, I hear you. I hear
Mhm.
you. I'll just tell you this. You're not the only one who had a bad summer of anxiety and depression for
Mhm.
for a different reason. I had it too.
Mhm.
It was mainly
Mhm.
because of not trying to find identity. I think you had it and then I had it the next summer. Mine was
Okay.
because of just social anxiety. So
Mm.
I do have a lot of anxiety in general and some depression, not as much as it used to be, but I
Mhm.
have high social anxiety. Like, truth be told, I'll just be honest. Before I met you, I had to listen to music. Otherwise, I'm like, oh God, if I say something wrong or
Mhm.
something completely stupid, she could hang up and then
Mhm.
that thought just goes over the top.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
that's what I deal with. But since we're about you, though, what about you? Do you still deal with anxiety and depression today? And if so, how do you make it more, I don't want to say curable, but manageable?
Yeah. I think I think like as a whole, I don't. Um, but there are times where it will still come up. Um, and and it'll still hit me. Um, uh, but I always turn to um, um, songwriting and singing and and playing guitar uh, and into my faith. Um, just to remind me of um why I'm here, and um what I'm called to do.
Right. And I understand that. I know you write a lot about music, about gospel, and about your case, but an
Mhm,
idea, and I like to suggest this to you, and this is just, me being a friend.
mhm. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about writing, like writing music about like others who have like conditions like autism, OCD,
Mhm,
Tourette syndrome, what it's like for them? Have you,
mhm.
I'm not saying like done it, but considered it before?
Uh, y yeah, yeah, I definitely have, and I think, uh, uh, I can kind of plug my debut album, um, uh, that I'm currently working on, but there are, uh, a ton of songs on there that I think, um, uh, people with, um, um, all sorts of, um, struggles, are gonna relate to, so.
Ah, okay. Okay, yeah. I'm glad you're doing that because it
Mhm.
definitely needs to be spread, and you do a lot with mental health too as well. I can tell that
Mhm.
because it was your mental
Yeah.
health was affected once upon a time.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, speaking of music, let's go dive into music more. So, to Amanda Mammana, what is the most
Mhm.
fascinating part of music?
I think the most fascinating part is that, um, for people, or I think that it's so, um, versatile, and that people can, create something, um, so different from, like, um, like another person's music, and it could be so personable. I think, it's just a way that, um, I think, um, like the type of, um, uh, art form that is so, um, captivating. I think that music is like, uh, extremely captivating. Like, it can make you, um, feel sad. It can make you feel happy. Um, it can make you feel, um, excited. Um, it can calm you. Um, it just it it can make you feel, um, so many different things, and I think that's like, um, um, really, really cool.
Yeah, I like that too. I like the same thoughts, but it's a little different. So with me
Mhm.
personally, music, it takes me on an emotional journey, like where
Yes.
you feel the happiness, sadness,
Mhm.
but then you could create your own story to it. Cause
Mhm.
in music videos, there's a lot of like stories and they're trying to make you like think of, okay,
Mhm.
this is what's going on. Here it is. Look at it. Mm,
Mhm.
you're right. It could be that way. That probably is the basis, but it can be interpreted in a totally
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally like, um, I kinda like to think of it like, um, if you're reading like a book, and, like you picture, like the characters, like what they look um, like the setting and stuff, and, 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 and like you said, yeah, I think that music, it like, it can make you, um, so creative.
So you're basically saying it's a digital book in
Kind of, yeah.
retrospect. I mean, you're not
Yeah.
right. It is. I mean,
Mhm.
so yeah. So now let's talk about your musicians you admire. So tell me some
Mhm.
musicians who you like.
Yeah, I think, um, a a big one for me, um, uh, Nightbird, who was on, AGT, a couple years ago. Her story and just who she was, and, how she carried herself and her her perspective like on life. It just like totally inspired me. Yeah, so she's a big one. Let's see. I listen to like a lot of different types like of music. I've got like a wide uh taste like in music. Um uh I um like 70s music and like that type of like that era of like storytelling through music, like Carole King, um um uh uh Joni Mitchell, like all those types of storytelling, and some more contemporary stuff like Phoebe Bridgers, who I think is also a great storyteller through her music. So
That's pretty cool. And I
Mhm.
was kind of disappointed with the 2021 season, not because of the winner. The winner seemed like a great person, not at all. But I was sad that Nightbird kind of passed
Mhm.
away on us because I feel like if Nightbird stayed, there would have been no other person to beat her. She
Oh,
could have been beaten.
100%.
No one
100%.
could have beaten her.
Yep,
She would have
completely.
been like, all right, you don't have to give her the golden buzzer. Finals. There you go. Have a nice day, everybody.
Yep, completely.
Definitely. And since you're a Christian, I know my buddy likes this person. What about Toby Mac?
Oh, yes. I love Toby Mac.
I figured you would. I
Yes.
knew that. Well, I knew when you said Christian, you like that. I thought, okay, she's gonna like Toby Mac.
Oh,
I
yeah.
figured that one. I mean,
100%.
a couple of his songs are pretty good. What are they? Backseat Driver. That's
Yep.
one of them. That's pretty good. And then crap, what's the other one? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Blah, 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 blah. I can't remember the top of the title, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's call it Nameless, I guess. Maybe let's call
Yeah,
it that
no,
for
yeah.
now. So now, what is your favorite song to perform?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I think so. Um, for right now, it's a song that I wrote I think about like a month ago. And I got to perform it at a few shows, and um it just it's a lot of fun like to sing, but it's also really really fun to um share the um like the lyrics and the meaning behind it. um it's called um um uh Broken is Beautiful. um yeah, and that song is um it's about how uh we often view ourselves as um being broken, or not feeling uh uh worthy or good enough, but it's those things that make us who we are, and and they make us stronger. So
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. I love the title too. Broken is Beautiful.
thank
Dang,
you.
that's really good. I gotta admit, I
Thank you. Yeah.
that really catches. I think is gonna hook people's eyes. I really
Thank
do.
you.
Yeah. So now, when you are making a song, can you tell us what the process is like?
Yeah, so um when I get this question, yeah, um like I often um might tell people that I think each song is kind of like different. like how I write it. But I think like the most like common theme that I see like when I songwrite is like I usually come up with like a meaning that like I that like I want to portray or like or convey. Um so I usually do like a couple lines like of lyrics, and then I'll find like a melody, whether that's on the guitar or the piano, and like I kind of write and come up with the melody like at the same time. So
Right, right. I know one of my guests at C214 remaining victorious with Maya as the case. She's a mental health advocate, actually. She uses a lot of YouTube music for like harmonies and beats. Do you do the same?
I usually don't know. I usually come up like with like a chord progression like that I like, or a like a melody, and then I'll base it off of that.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mhm.
Now, for new musicians out there who are trying to get big, who are like, I don't want to say big like you or big
Mhm.
like the big
Mhm.
names out there like Ariana Grande and Luke Bryan, but
Mhm.
what music advice can you give out there that can lead them to higher achievements?
Mhm. Yeah, I think if you were to ask me that like a year ago, like I would have just been like, um,
I'm
uh,
local.
yeah, like I have no idea. Because like I truly didn't. Yeah, but I think that um, if you have that dream, like inside you, um, like it's gonna happen. And it's just a matter of um, uh, chasing after uh, e- every opportunity um, um, that comes your way, whether that's playing at a church or at a cafe, um, or a talent show, or uh, trying out for um, um, like a big show. I think just um, taking every opportunity you can to sing and to play um, uh, for people is huge.
Right. And
Mhm.
even if you are not the biggest name out there,
Mm,
going out there on stage is a big step in itself.
totally,
Truth be told,
totally.
it really is. Audition for
Mhm.
AGT, I'll tell you, you're gutsy. You are very
Thank you.
gutsy. It takes a lot of guts to do it. I mean, I don't know if I could do it, but we'll see what happens one day. You never know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely.
And I figured out the name of that song I was thinking of earlier. Feel It by Toby
Oh,
Mac.
okay. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what it was. I knew it was something it. I just couldn't remember what it. Was it good
yeah.
it, bad it? I mean, like
Yeah,
what it.
yeah, yeah.
I knew it wasn't just it. Something it.
Yeah.
And now I'll talk to you about this quote that you like big time. You say it a lot. When words fail, music speaks. Why is this quote? When words fail, music speaks to important to you from a personal standpoint. I could see why professional standpoint,
Yeah.
but why to you personally?
Mhm. I think um because of my speech, um I can often have a hard time um really um like speaking my mind, like, and explaining it, um because people will like occasionally not take me seriously because of my speech, but through songwriting and through performing, like I'm able to truly um, speak my mind and get my point across in a way that is I think so powerful.
I gotcha. And do you think maybe based on what I've heard, speaking
Mhm.
your mind is something that you work on today? 'Cause that's what it sounds like.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. I've definitely I'm learning to um I think uh fully speak my mind um through music, but also um through speaking uh as well.
Yeah, I work on that too because I do speak my mind. I'm probably
Mhm.
ahead, but I'm way ahead, if that makes any sense. So I did an
Mhm.
episode on
Mhm.
honesty and bluntness, and for the listeners, see 102 honesty versus bluntness, but they're the same thing to me. Honesty is the best
Mhm.
policy, but if you're blunt and you tell them how it
Mhm.
is, you're rude and you
Mhm.
feel embarrassed.
Mhm.
I don't have that. I'm just telling you how it is.
Mhm.
I was taught that way. So that's just,
Mhm.
part of me, and I work on that to
Yeah.
this day still, but we'll get there probably, or hopefully
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely.
yeah. Now your life change a lot at a fourth grade talent show. Talk to me about that.
Mhm. Um, yeah, so in fourth grade, um, which is when um, uh, I, I, I developed the stutter. Um, uh, but I signed up for um, um, my school's talent show to sing, and I remember um, thinking to myself, um, um, like I've been having trouble speaking. How am I supposed to get up on that stage uh, and sing for all those people? And it crossed my mind um, like a bunch of times, but I pushed through it because I really, really wanted to sing. Um, and I remember getting up there and um, um, I'm looking out like and seeing all these people's faces um, staring at me, and I was um, um, like, okay, like I'm here. I'm like, I can't back out of this now. Like, I just have to do it. Um, um, and, and I started singing, and it, it felt so freeing and just like fun. Um, uh, being up there, and it definitely, um, from that moment on, I wanted to be a singer, and I wanted to, um, uh, I just keep feeling that way.
Right. And that works for me too because even though I'm probably not the best singer alive, I do a lot of like karaoke. I
Oh,
like to enjoy
sweet.
that. It's part of my, I guess you could say, hobbies when I get to.
Mhm.
I'm not 21 yet, but probably in 5 months I
Mhm.
will be. So probably a lot more karaoke bars then, I guess is what
Yeah.
you would say. But that's what I like about too with the performing is it's not the singing, it's the movement. So you can't because I feel like in life we're trapped in a box. Like we have to sit still or stand still and
Mhm.
talk to someone.
Mhm.
We can't be moving our hands and gestures, our
Yeah.
legs while we're talking to someone. Otherwise,
Mhm.
you get tons of looks. But
Mhm.
creating a song to have that opportunity,
Mhm.
that's what is so cool, I think, in life.
Totally, yeah. Mhm.
Th- Now, there's are some experiences I want to talk to you about. So,
Mhm.
can you tell me the Fox and Friends that I heard you got to do, along with the
Yes.
halftime performance show experiences were like?
Yeah, those 2, uh, performances were so much fun. I performed halftime, I in October, um, and I got to, sing, um, my song, worth fighting for. For halftime, for a crucial catch Sunday, which if people don't know what that is, it's honoring cancer survivors. So I thought that was really, really cool, and I was honored to sing my song for that cause. And then in December, at Fox and Friends, I got to sing a Christmas song that I wrote. With my sister, actually. Yeah, that was like a ton of fun, because like spending like the Christmas season in New York City is like something that like I love to do. So that was like a ton of fun.
Well, I'll tell you, you're gutsy for doing it in the cold. I ain't.
Oh, it was so cold. Yeah.
Oh my God. No
Yeah.
way, Jose. I hate the cold. Hate it. Hate
Yeah.
it. Hate it. I'm the person who loves the heat. Summer boy, all around outdoorsman.
Okay.
So that's just the type of person I am, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, what about also? I've heard you got to open for a certain Jason Gray.
Yes, I did.
How was that like?
Yeah, that was so much fun. I think that was like my first like real like concert experience. And like I had a ton of fun like meeting like new people, like, and getting to sing like my songs, and yeah, it was just a ton of fun, and uh Jason's like a super, super cool guy, and we just had a blast.
You seem like you did, based on what I saw on Facebook. Look, you were taking a bunch of pictures and you were starstruck. Jason, I figure you would. Is Jason big? I want Jason. You like Jason a lot, like based on like music beforehand.
Yeah. I was a big fan of his for a while. Yeah, and then it felt like so surreal, like being able like to open up for him, which is crazy.
Oh yeah, like I said, I've been starstruck too from a lot of people through this podcast. One of my biggest starstruck. This isn't a big deal, but have you seen the show Hell's Kitchen before?
A couple episodes, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of them, Tommy Stevens, and for the listeners, C223, Rock Your Appetite with Tommy Stevens, but he was on my show because if you see what I've seen, Hell's Kitchen puts them through hell, literally and figuratively. But no matter what he got through, he had a smile on his face. He was a nice guy.
Oh, that's so cool.
Rock star. And I respected him for it. And I was like, all right, we got to have this person on and tell us about the experiences.
Yeah.
And another part of the podcast is success for all. Like in society, they think going to speech language therapy, rehab, that's a taboo. It doesn't need to be. You're getting help. But and he shows the success for all because he is tattooed all over his body. He literally is, like head to toe.
Oh wow.
And if you looked at him, you would think he is a con. You would think he is a convict. But when you get to know him, he's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's really amazing when you talk to him. Now, I do want to talk to you more about your family. So can you tell me how your family, and I assume your boyfriend, because I'm going to be real, you are boyfriend material.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I mean in the most politest way possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So anyway, can you tell how your family, and I assume your boyfriend, support you?
Yeah, so I do not have a boyfriend.
I'm
but I
surprised at, but
appreciate your
continue.
compliment. Yeah. Um, uh, yeah, my family has been, just like, um, uh, the most like, uh, important people, in my life. Uh, they've always, pushed me um, to, to follow my dreams. Uh, but they've always, cared for me and, um, uh, um, always had like my best, interest at heart. Um, so my sister, I have an older sister. I, um, she sings too. So some of, um, um, my fondest memories, like with her, um, singing like at church and, um, writing songs together. Um, and, and my parents, I'm so grateful for them. They have, um, sacrificed like so much for me to be, um, where I am now. So, I'm super, super grateful for them.
That's awesome, buddy. I can tell you definitely got a good family, but I don't want to say does
Mhm.
your father support you more than your others because I don't think that at all. But I guess you would call your. I guess what I'm saying is your dad the backbone of support.
I think so, yeah, and I think, um, the two of us were really, really similar.
How
So,
so?
um, I well, we're both very, very, um, stubborn, which can be good sometimes, which can also, um, it it can also be bad, but, and, I think we're both very, very persistent, as well. And, uh, 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 we like the, like the same stuff. And, um, uh, growing up, we really, really bonded over music. Um, he's the reason why I think um, like I love music and, so yeah, yeah, uh, uh, definitely like my biggest, um, supporter.
Right. And I'll
Mhm.
tell you, I'm like the same with my mother and see when if I meet my
Mhm.
mother for the listeners, but you and
Mhm.
your dad remind me a lot of than my mother and
Mhm.
I because there are a lot of days where Ryan's class shed and the hardest part days with her is working together because whew,
Yeah.
she's the best partner in life. But then believe me, there are some days where I want to kill her. I'm
Yep.
not gonna
Yep.
lie to you.
Yep. I totally get that.
Yeah. So we'll wrap it up here. So these are just for fun. So what is your paradise meal and why is it your favorite? I'm gonna take a guess because you ate this when you said, I'm gonna go celebrate this after my semifinal performance. Is it pizza?
Yes. Pizza, 100%. I
What do
love
you like
pizza.
on it? Meat lover, supreme, pepperoni, cheese?
I think it, it, it depends, but I will usually, I like just go for like a plain, um, cheese pizza.
Cheese pizza? Yeah, that's probably my second. I'm
Mhm.
sausage meat lovers, so
Okay.
I have like the ham,
Nice.
bacon, sausage,
Nice, nice.
pepperoni, even add salami and bologna, even if you want to. I don't care.
Okay,
The
cool.
more meat, the better.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, what about your favorite movie or TV show and why do you like it?
Mm. Um, my favorite TV show is probably, um, Seinfeld. Um, that show is just so funny. Like, and it always, uh, puts me in like a good mood and makes me laugh. So
So you're a sitcom person as well, I'm
yeah,
guessing?
yeah, yeah.
I'm like comedy. Like comedy, like when I like to watch
Cool.
something, I'm just the type of person who likes to laugh a lot just because of one, the mental health aspect, and
Mhm.
what's not what Howie Mandel said, not with your audition, but a previous
Mhm.
audition, is laughter tends to, get us away from the world. And
Yeah,
he, like me, I like to use laughter to gain some happiness, or attempt to at least.
totally.
So
Totally, yeah.
I'm kind of like Howie Mandel with that. I'm not Howie
Mhm.
Mandel with the comedy style, but I'm
Yeah,
Howie
yeah,
Mandel with
yeah.
like belief
Mhm.
on that. Now,
For
what's
sure.
been your favorite vacation you've ever taken, and why did you enjoy that vacation very much?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think wow, it's like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Uh, uh, my family and I went to Puerto Rico. Um, for spring break, and that area is just like stunning. Um, and the people there like are so kind. It was just a blast. Hmm.
Ah, I see your point. Was it hot there?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I'm already
There,
in.
there you go. Yep.
Yay. I'm already happy now. Were you in a chair with like a beach chair
Oh
with the
yeah.
shades? Oh
Oh yeah.
God, you're gonna make me jealous, aren't you? Now, my final question is, are there any good memories that you want to tell our viewers about? If you do, why do you remember that memory the most? So before you answer though, I like to end with something like sentimental that just made you feel good inside and thought, man, this is a good life right here. And a funny memory that made you fall on the floor laughing. And it can be with your dad, AGT, your older sister. You'll call you want to answer it, buddy.
Okay, let's see. Um, we'll do the funny one first. If I can think. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Um, I think. I think. Uh, a funny memory was with my mom. And my sister. So we played soccer together. Uh, in high school, and um, uh, this was after practice. And and my mom was there, and we had a friend, and he was really really good at soccer. Um, and he challenged like my mom, like to play one on one. Um, and he would dribble and pass her right, like, and just um um breaking her ankles, and she tried to kick it and like get the ball away, and she fell backwards, and uh we have it like on video. She was okay, obviously, like that's why it was funny. um uh but uh like it happened uh um like in slow motion, like it was just like doom, doom, and um like she fell back, like she was cracking up, like we were all
Oh
cracking
God.
up.
Is your family full of klutz? Are they clumsy?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. I am too. I'm very clumsy. I'm not very gracious. So if
Yeah,
I'm wearing a
yeah.
if I was wearing a white shirt, I wouldn't be surprised if I got spilled like cheese, not like cheese dip on it or something. So that's a lot of happening with me. And you're talking about kicks. Was it the Charlie Brown almost scene?
Kind of, yeah.
That's what it sounds
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what it sounds like. I haven't watched Charlie Brown in a while. Do that when I
Same,
think
yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Thinking out loud on that.
Mhm.
Anyway, well, Amanda, is that all? Is there anything else you'd like to promote or any closing remarks you'd like to make?
Um, um, just thanks so much for having me. Uh, yeah, I think, just like for everybody listening, we all have a calling and a purpose, in life. And it doesn't matter what that is, except if you're, um, helping people, inspiring people, encouraging people. Um, so yeah,
Well, thank you so much. Have a great day.
thanks. You too.